Love makes you do stupid things. Remember that time you were out in public and randomly smiled like an idiot? And it's not that you're creepy, but you remembered something so damn cute. And oh boy, you're madly in love. At first, everything was exciting. The late night talks that make you feel like you finally found someone who gets you. The little touches, the inside jokes, the way your heart races just thinking about them. But then, things start to shift. The texts slow down, the energy changes, and before you know it, you're left wondering what went wrong. Like everything has already started to fall apart, and you can't control it. No one can. Because love doesn't just happen in your heart, it happens in your brain. And your brain is an a-hole, because it loves to play tricks on you. Like, did you ever have a crush so intense that just the thought of them made your heart race? That's because love doesn't have to be real to feel real. The brain fills in the gaps, creating an entire relationship in your head, even if the other person barely knows you exist. It twists reality, making them seem more perfect, more meant for you than they actually are. That's why, when you fall for someone, you don't see them as they really are. You see a fantasy version of them. You ignore the red flags, rewrite memories, and convince yourself they were perfect. But perfection isn't real. And when reality sets in, love can crumble under the weight of your own illusions, especially when you get rejected. And it's not just dramatic to say heartbreak is painful, it literally is. Studies show that your brain can process romantic rejection just like it processes physical pain and drug withdrawal. That's why getting dumped feels like getting hit by a truck and quitting caffeine all at once. And that's also why moving on feels impossible, because your brain automatically clings to the person who rejected you, obsessing over what went wrong, replaying every conversation and every text, searching for signs that maybe, just maybe, they secretly loved you back. But nope, they don't. Yet your brain refuses to accept that. So instead, you spiral into sleepless nights and existential crises. And as if that wasn't bad enough, your brain doesn't just cling to love, it clings to jealousy. Ever noticed how some people only feel in love when there's a little jealousy involved? Like when they see their partner getting attention from someone else and suddenly their feelings explode? That's not just insecurity, it's chemistry. For some people, jealousy doesn't just come from love, it creates love. The uncertainty, the fear of losing someone, the competition, it spikes adrenaline and dopamine, tricking your brain into thinking the relationship is more intense than it actually is. That's why some couples constantly fight and make up. That's why some people feel the strongest when they're afraid of losing their partner. It's not love keeping them hooked, it's the emotional roller coaster. But that kind of love isn't real, it's an addiction. If your passion only flares up when jealousy is involved, what you're really chasing isn't a person. It's the high of wanting what you think you can't have. Real love? It doesn't rely on fear. It's not about proving your worth, it's about knowing you're wanted, even when there's no competition. So, how do you stop that from happening? You need to understand yourself, especially your attachment style, because the way you connect with people, it's wired into you. And there are 3 types of attachment styles. The first is secure attachment. Some people are lucky enough to be secure in relationships. They communicate well, trust their partners, and don't spend their nights over-analyzing punctuation in a text. Then there are the anxious ones, people with an anxious attachment style. These are the ones who constantly worry about whether their partner still likes them, overthinking every shift in tone, every delayed reply. They need reassurance, and when they don't get it, their brain freaks out. And finally, the avoidant ones, the people who love being close until it starts feeling too close. Then suddenly they need space, a lot of space. And here's where things get really messy. Anxious and avoidant people are weirdly drawn to each other. One just wants to be close while the other starts feeling suffocated and backs off. And the more the avoidant partner distances themselves, the more anxious their partner becomes. And the craziest part, the more painful it gets, the more addictive it feels. You see, when an avoidant partner finally throws a little affection your way after pulling back for days, your brain floods with dopamine, reinforcing the idea that this must be love. But it's not. And yet, guess who usually gets blamed? The anxious one. People call them too needy. Like if they just calmed down and stopped looking for a little comfort, everything would be fine. But that's bullshit. Because studies show that the healthiest relationships aren't the ones where people pretend they don't need each other. They're the ones where partners actually depend on each other. It's called the dependency paradox. Basically, the more secure you feel in a relationship, the more independent you actually become. Why? Because knowing someone has your back frees up your brain to focus on, literally everything else, instead of spiraling over whether they secretly hate you. So yeah, needing your partner isn't the problem. The problem is needing someone who can't give you what you need. And what makes love even more addictive is that it floods your system not just with dopamine, but also with oxytocin, the same chemicals involved in drug addiction. That's why falling in love feels so insanely good. But the problem? The high doesn't last. And when it fades, you don't just snap out of it. Even when the relationship is toxic, even when you know it's bad for you, even when you're crying over someone who treated you like an afterthought, your brain still wants the hit. So you hold on, idealizing your ex, convincing yourself that if you had just done one thing differently, maybe you'd still be together. Well, you wouldn't. But your brain doesn't care. It just wants another dose. And the crazy thing is, the more painful it is, the more you think it's love. That's why the most dramatic, unstable relationships often feel the most intense. It's also why people with anxious attachment styles tend to confuse anxiety with passion. When someone gives them mixed signals, sometimes affectionate, sometimes distant, their brain freaks out and starts obsessing. And when that person finally gives them a little attention, boom, instant dopamine hit. The cycle repeats, and before you know it, you're stuck in a toxic relationship, confusing pain with love. But real love? It doesn't feel like an emotional guessing game. It feels safe. If you're constantly questioning where you stand, you're not in love. You're in psychological warfare. And honestly, romantic love doesn't last. At least not in the same way it begins. That intense, heart-racing, I need to be with you all the time feeling, it has a shelf life, usually between 12 to 18 months. And after that, the chemicals in your brain shift, and the excitement fades. Best case scenario, it settles into something stable and comfortable. Safe is a given. Worst case, it disappears completely, leaving you wondering where the spark went. That's why so many long-term couples struggle. It's why relationships start feeling more like obligation than adventure. Why people get bored. Love isn't an endless supply of fireworks, it's a candle burning down. And sometimes, no matter how hard you try, it just flickers out. And love, it can make you lose your mind. If you've ever looked back at a relationship and thought, wow, I was acting completely insane, well, that's because love literally messes with your brain. Jealousy, obsession, stalking your ex's social media at 3 a.m., none of it is rational, but love isn't rational. Studies show that heartbreak and unrequited love can push people into extreme actions, sometimes even crime. Ever heard of a crime of passion? It happens more often than you think. People have done reckless things in the name of love, fights, betrayals, impulsive decisions they regret forever. Not because they were bad people, but because love hijacks your brain. So, what now? You might be thinking, okay, so love is a scam. Should I just avoid it? No. The key isn't avoiding love, it's understanding it. Know your attachment style so you don't get stuck in toxic cycles. Recognize that love is mostly brain chemistry, not some fairy tale magic. And accept that not all relationships are meant to last. But that doesn't mean they weren't worth something.